morning to you. Such a lovely day. So, not a lot of news at this end. Last week was news enough. Felt very good about the budget we passed. I was pleased that the county executive felt very good about the budget we passed, and I think our community is feeling pretty good about the budget we passed. It was a budget that was equal parts fiscally responsible and taking care of priorities that our council feels very strongly about. It was a budget that maintained our goal of getting to 10% reserves. Under that budget, we'll get to 8.9 at the end of next year. It's a budget that I'm confident will retain our AAA bond rating, and at the same time, taking care of important initiatives that my colleagues and I believe we need to advance in our county. So anytime you can do both of those things, I feel like it's a pretty darn good budget. And it was a budget that we actually achieved with great unanimity and a lot of collaboration. And everybody had a hand in it, and everybody made a contribution to it. So I think we ended the week last week on a very high note. I obviously was pleased about the divestment resolution passed. It was something that had been contentious as legislation, which again, as many of you may appreciate, no jurisdiction in the country had passed divestment by legislation. It had all been done through resolution, except the state of California had a very small divestment piece for thermal coal that passed by legislation, but no other jurisdiction that's dealt with this issue did it through legislation. So I'd been trying to push the edge of the envelope there, and that didn't work, but resolution does work, and it passed on an 8-1 vote, showing that we were able to achieve much more common ground in that way, and that pleases me. One of the things that I liked about our budget, going back to it briefly, is that it also took care of the basics. We increased our funding for road resurfacing, a fundamental government obligation. We took care of our libraries and our recreation facilities and said, they need to be clean, so we increased maintenance for those. They need to be inviting public spaces. So we not only had big initiatives such as helping to get pre-K funded and making sure that we advance universal pre-K, and we have done so to the tune of $4.5 million, but we took care of the basics. One of the issues that I'm struggling with in this moment is our county is not taking care of the basics when it comes to picking up yard waste. We still have a contractor that is both Bethesda and Silver Spring, not inconsequential parts of our county, that are not being addressed appropriately. The company that has that contract is not performing its duties. And I had sent a letter several weeks ago asking to be briefed. I was briefed the next day. It's now 2 weeks later, and we're still no closer to having the issue resolved, at least from the community's perspective. I am sending a letter again today that says we need to get these people out of there as soon as possible, and I need to know the penalties that these people have accrued for failing to meet their contractual obligations, because it is simply not okay. We've had people that had yard waste in front of their yards for 2 weeks, and then because it was sitting in front of their yard for 2 weeks, it rained on it. So that by the time the contractor came to pick it up, the bags broke. They left the bags on this person's yard. All right? Talk about insult to injury. It really is not okay. So it's not okay with me. I know it's not okay with the executive branch. I know they are working hard on it. I understand that the county executive is being briefed tomorrow with respect to it, and I expect an answer to my letter tomorrow too. It is unfortunate, but we need to demonstrate in no uncertain terms that it is not acceptable to fail to meet a fundamental government responsibility. With that, let me open it up to you guys. What's on your minds?
What has the community been saying to you about these trash and recycling issues? You mentioned the one instance of someone having their yard waste left out. Is this multiple instances? Is your office getting several calls about it? Can you just explain what you've been hearing?
Oh, absolutely. I've gotten some of the ugliest emails that I've gotten in my tenure as a council member saying, I pay these taxes for what purpose? You can't even pick up my trash? And I say, I'm with you on this. But guess what? That doesn't please them either. So it is something that is really, it touches a nerve, understandably so. Now, we did get ahead of it when it comes to picking up the trash, thank goodness. That service has, in fact, continued. We have not gotten a handle with respect to picking up the recyclables. So it is the last remaining piece, not inconsequential piece, is the yard waste. So it needs to be attended to, and I hope we can come up with some definitive announcements because the public doesn't know what's taking place, and they need to know what's taking place.
Is it the same company that does all three, or why would they choose?
No, there are 3 different companies that have contracts in our county. This particular company has a history of having difficult relationships with its drivers. It did not pay them what they were to have been paid years ago. And we, I believe, fined them as a function of that. So retaining drivers in an economy that is moving slightly up is sometimes a challenge, I'm told, because drivers then have other options. Once you get your commercial license, which is what you need in order to drive these trucks, if the rest of the construction world is beginning to pick up and you have other options as a commercial operator, you will take a higher paying job. These people are not competing to hold their drivers. And it's as simple as that. They need to pay more if they're going to have drivers. And apparently that's not their business model. And so we are suffering because they have refused to pay people enough wages to keep them.
This is all 3 companies?
No.
Just
Potomac Disposal.
What's the issue with the other 2 companies?
No issue with the other 2. The issue that our county faces is how do you substitute for this particular contractor? Not everybody has this equipment. Not everybody has enough drivers. So it's not like you say, I can just fire these guys and tomorrow have replacements. So it's been something that the executive branch has been struggling with to try and, as seamlessly as possible, move these guys out and move enough equipment and drivers in from the other 2 in order to compensate for it.
So last time I covered this issue, it was both recyclables and yard waste that was the issue. So they've fixed recyclables at this point?
That's my understanding.
Now it's just yard waste
That's my understanding.
When the council approved the reconciliation list, did that dip into county reserves?
Did not.
Did it says, I think Ike was pursuing an 8 or 10% increase in reserves. Do you know what the final?
We met the county executive's budget on the reserve. I think it's one of the reasons why we got an almost unprecedented press release from the county executive saying how happy he was with our budget. Mr. Farber is here. I don't think he'd seen one of those press releases in many, many years. Never. He had never seen such a happy press release. I will say it helps if you threaten people that you might go into the reserves and then you don't. Then they are so happy. And so there were forces that were certainly looking at that option, and at the end of the day, we were able to do this without touching the reserves. And that's better for everybody. Anything else, guys?
Yeah, I saw that Metro Action was part of the reconciliation list. That's something you've been kind of skeptical of. Can you see yourself maybe a year from now seeing that this Metro Action goes well, that it's a viable option instead of a BRT on Route 29?
No.
Any reason for that?
Yes, because
To the BRT?
BRT gets you out of traffic, not stuck in traffic. So this bus will sit in the same traffic that bedevils 29 and everybody who drives it every day. So the ultimate goal is to wave goodbye to the traffic. That's quite all right.
But the current county executive's proposal plans to use BRT in mixed traffic.
For half of it. That's right. And what we have asked for and what we will receive shortly is a supplemental appropriation request to look at a solution that we think is far more elegant and gets it out of traffic, a dedicated lane in the median, which we think is got great promise. And so one of the reasons why I was reluctant to embrace the Metro Extra is because there was a big swath of the community that saw it as an alternative. And that was never going to be my position with respect to it. And I didn't see how it was going to be such a much better service than what is otherwise available. But it was the will of a majority of my colleagues to support this piece in order to provide better service sooner, but not in lieu of bus rapid transit.
Have you heard back from DOT about when they'd come back with a supplemental appropriation?
We had been told that it would be only a matter of months, so I assume we will get something from them in either June or July.
Have you had a chance to view the proposal from Oarsman over the encroachment or the alleged encroachment in the easement at the Capitol Crescent Trail? And if you have, what are your views on the proposal they've offered the public?
So I have been briefed with respect to it by our Parks Department and our Department of Permitting Service. And here was the question that I posed to them. First of all, there are litigation risks. We can press our point and perhaps prevail, perhaps not. So I asked, okay, what would we achieve if we win? What would we lose? What would happen to us if we lose? And what do we achieve by virtue of this, if you will, settlement framework? And what I heard from our parks people in particular was that they believe that the framework that has been proposed is a net public benefit. That is, it is better than what could be achieved either by litigation or current circumstances. So that the improvements to the Capitol Crescent Trail are such that we could not achieve that even if we won in litigation. So from my perspective, that's the beginning and the end of the story, is something being proposed that is a net benefit to our public. Have we leveraged this mistake, which I believe it was a mistake, and I believe Oarsman has publicly said it was a mistake. Have we leveraged this mistake in a manner that creates a net public benefit? So based on what I saw in the conversations I've had with trail lovers, and they concluded that it was a net public benefit. So obviously the matter would have to come before the council. We would have public hearings with respect to it. If I can be convinced that this actually isn't a net public benefit, then I would obviously not support it. But at this juncture, from what I've seen, it felt like it was something that would promote the broader public interest.
A week ago, another school security officer was charged with having inappropriate relations with a student. Is the school system doing enough to make sure that its own house is in order?
I would direct you to the school system, good sir.
What do you think?
Well, I don't know the circumstances with respect to this, so I'm not in a position to judge. Obviously, none of us want to see something like this happen. But for me to then go from that obvious response to these people aren't doing their job, I can't do that because I just don't know enough of the facts around it. And I can tell you that I have no question about Dr. Smith's commitment to keeping his system as safe as possible. So I don't doubt their motivation. If something fell through the cracks, I can't speak to it. I just don't know enough.
We're a little over a year out now from the June Democratic primary.
Is that right?
Given that two council members have already said they're running for county executive, if they're you, are said to be considering it, and you said that you're considering it, how do you hope or expect your fellow council members and yourself to handle competing political priorities on the council as the campaign gets underway in earnest? And do you expect a level of civility on the dais, especially as council president, in public when you're working as council members?
I guess what I would say is I've done this work now for 10 plus years. I can only speak to how I've tried to do my work, which is to be respectful and civil and to be collaborative. That's not going to change. And my hope is that that doesn't change with respect to how my colleagues do their business. Sometimes things get testy. Each of us carry our own personalities into these conversations. I remain committed to working with my colleagues on the issues that are important to them and keeping our council collegial and as united as possible. That's how I've done my work, and that's how I will continue to do my work, regardless of the political dynamics.
Any thoughts on future political plans?
I would not share those thoughts in this venue, quite frankly. I am here before you as council president, and there will be other opportunities to have different conversations. They will not take place in this venue. I really feel strongly that I can't talk about any of my own political thoughts for myself in a context in which I am here before you as council president speaking on behalf of our council. So that's another way of saying
Hey, on the grassroots level and the local level, obviously you're around county politics a significant amount. Do you see a surge in interest in getting involved and wanting to run for office in Montgomery County? There's going to be a number of open seats on the county council. There's also possibly going to be a lot of open seats in the state legislature as legislators try to move up either to the Senate or possibly to Congress if Delaney runs for governor. What are you seeing at the grassroots level? Do you see kind of an interest in a renewed interest in politics, and what do you attribute that to?
I do see a renewed interest in politics. I think interest in local politics has been sparked by developments at the federal level. When you see the President of the United States about to propose a budget that would slash Medicaid funding and safety net, render the safety net really anything but a safety net, what that does is it tells people they need to get involved. And so you see at the grassroots level an incredible surge of energy of saying we need to fight back. And I think people are beginning to appreciate the role of local government has become more important, not less important. One, we're a functioning government. And two, we actually deliver to our people. And three, we're going to be increasingly called upon to step in where, if to the extent to which the federal government abdicates what has been its responsibilities. So you see that here locally. I was at a function on Saturday night in which a woman came up to me, gave me her card, and said, "I am so ready. I want to run." And this is a woman who's a PhD doctor, had been in the federal government at a very high level, and oh my goodness, is she ready to go? And I think you see that across the board. You see all of these organizations, Indivisible, One Revolution, people that are really so committed to making sure that the values that are important to us in Montgomery County do not get destroyed at the federal level, and to the extent to which they can participate, they will participate. Thank you, guys.